So how do you feel about boundaries? It's a legitimate question. A lot of people come to me really struggling with this concept. They often feel guilty for setting boundaries, or they're not sure about even what a boundary is. They've heard the term, set the boundary, things like that, but that's really confusing for them because it's not something that's well taught in our society nowadays, right? They know that boundaries are really important to having healthy, constructive, supportive, and wonderful relationships, but why? And oftentimes they also know that they feel like their boundaries are being violated, but they can't quite pinpoint what the boundary is that's being violated. That's why I've created the Clarifying and Creating Your Boundaries free PDF. You can find out what your boundaries are, how to tune in to what the boundary needs to be, and how to effectively create and communicate your boundary so that way you stay in this place that respects you, respects the other person, but also gives you the confidence in your boundaries so that way you stop being gaslighted, disrespected, and unseen. Having your boundaries really clear gives you a voice and also helps the other person stay in accountability with themselves. So that's not a role that you have to take on anymore. So if you are ready to really have clear boundaries, to really understand what your role is in the boundary, and to give yourself some safety and some protection against people that might try to gaslight you or are just being disrespectful, go grab my Creating and Clarifying Your Boundary PDF at erinandersonthetraumacoach.com. And while you're there, let's schedule a call with me. Come have a chat with me so that way I can really, really help you master this particular skill, creating boundaries, clarifying the boundary, communicating that boundary, and so that way I can also help you have relationships that show up to support you, cherish you, and love you.
Hey everyone, it's Erin Anderson with the Erin Anderson Betrayal Trauma Coaching. I am super excited that you have tuned in today. Let's get talking about how to heal from betrayal trauma. Welcome to the other side of the struggle. This is a podcast where we talk about trauma, how to heal it, and then how to take it and use it to unlock your mission and your potential, and to use it to live your very best dream life. When you're dealing with betrayal trauma, it can be hard to know how to heal it, how to stop the pain, and to know what your next steps are to take in your own life. And these are the questions that we try to answer here. Trauma has the ability to rob us of our joy and identity, which is why it's so miserable to experience. But with the right tools and with the right mindset, we can totally reclaim that joy and even use this trauma to strengthen ourselves so that way trauma does not knock us off of our joy again. Living your dream life should be a non-negotiable, but trauma tends to try to negotiate that with you. And even though trauma is not something that we will completely ever be free of in our life, the pain is negotiable. This is why I created Erin Anderson Betrayal Trauma Coaching and this podcast, is because I want my listeners, I want my clients to live, truly live free from the prison that trauma can put you in. I want you to live on the other side of the struggle.
guys. Welcome back to another episode of The Other Side of the Struggle. I'm super glad you guys are here, and I've got to be honest, I have some news for you guys, my beautiful, fabulous listeners, that might come as a bit of a shock to you. But don't worry, there's actually some really good news too at the end of this kind of shocking news. So I know I've got you all on the edge of your seats, right? But so I've been looking at the direction I want to take my business for a while, and I've been looking at the direction I want to take my life and a couple other things, and then the way that I teach things. And I've realized that it's time for me to go ahead and hang up this particular podcast. Now, before you cry and you're like, no, let me tell you that it's not because I'm not going to be doing any podcasting again. It's that I'm up leveling into a new one. So I will still have this podcast, and all of its episodes will probably have roughly around 130 episodes by the time that I wrap up with this podcast. So we just have a few more episodes in this particular one, okay? Which is basically a free course, by the way, for you guys. And I want that to stay there because I know so many of you still need this content. But I'm going to be doing another podcast, and I'm still working out the details of it all. And I will let you guys know exactly what those details are when I have them figured out. But it's basically going to be a lot of this kind of stuff, but really geared toward entrepreneur women who are ready to up-level their lives and their relationships, to claim greatness, to claim that 6 or 7 figure earnings and relationships that show up to support them. Because one of the things I've noticed as I've been coaching women for the last 11, almost 12 years is that one of the greatest populations I've ever seen that deals with betrayal trauma is women in entrepreneur places. And I think a lot of the reason is because when you're an entrepreneur, that increases your relationship capacity quite a bit. And unfortunately, not all relationships are super great, to be honest with you. And we have to heal certain things inside of us in order to claim and call in those types of relationships, and to also claim our authenticity. So with that, I just wanted to make that announcement, but don't worry, I still have everybody in really good hands. I will be turning over a large part of my Betrayal Trauma Coaching business to one of my good friends and somebody I mentored personally, Stephanie Wieldon, and she'll be on our podcast soon to talk and chat back and forth because she's just an amazing, amazing person. And I will also be still present in the Other Side of the Struggle group for those of you listening to the podcast. And so it's actually going to be more support for my wonderful listeners and followers, but just a bit of a different turn because I really also am passionate about helping women earn money and, business accountability and things like that. Like I really love it when women have their own money and their own ways to spend it. So that said, let's go ahead and move on to today's topic, which is the 4 cornerstones each relational foundation needs. Now, a lot of you, like I said, are dealing with some type of betrayal in your most cherished relationships. Now, that could be betrayal with your spouse. Maybe one of your children has betrayed you. Maybe you're dealing with betrayal in business, like all kinds of different types of betrayal. And it doesn't feel good, for sure. But there's also the relationship that you have with yourself. And to be honest with you, this is also where all relationships stem from. I see a lot of people, and I've probably said this on this podcast before, but I see a lot of people who kind of lean into this idea that that they're very focused on what their relationships are like, how with other people, or their relationship with money. But when you look at the relational tiers, those two tiers are still your foundational tiers. They're the not the foundational, I'm sorry, but they're the results tiers. They are the tiers that show you what's really going on with your relationship with God and your relationship with yourself. So we really need to take a look at the first two tiers, which is your relationship with God and your relationship with self. Because if we want good relationships with others, and if we want good relationships with money and abundance and, all the things that we want to call into our lives, then we really need to take a look at, again, those first two tiers, because that's where all the action takes place, believe it or not. Because think about it, your four cornerstones are mutual trust, mutual respect, mutual space, and mutual love. Those are your four cornerstones of any great relationship. But if you don't have respect, trust, space, and love for yourself, the best way you possibly can, it's very hard to have that type of relationship with anyone else. So, let's go ahead and talk first and foremost about mutual trust. Again, we remember that you are the main thread in your life, right? You're the main character. You are 100% in your life. I know like a lot of people tend to say like they want to check out of their lives, but I don't think that's something you guys are doing. But even if somebody checks out of their life, they're still with themselves 100% of the time. Your relationship with yourself is the one relationship that you can't leave. And this is part of the reason why it's so important to have a good foundation in that relationship. So when we talk about trusting oneself, that means that we take action upon the things that we say we're actually going to do. Self-trust is broken when we make promises to ourselves or even promises to other people and we don't follow through. Now, if you've been in a relationship where there's been a lot of betrayal, you can understand that this is one of the things that really bothers you, right? Is when somebody that we love makes promises to us or commitments and doesn't follow through with them. So, trust is so key in our relationships. And when we don't feel like it's there, we don't feel safe. And safety is something that we definitely need in order to be our authentic selves. This is why trust with yourself is so important first. Because if you don't even feel safe with yourself, and this is the one place, the one relationship you can't escape from, well, then where do you go? So, one of the boundaries that I really love to teach my clients is first and foremost having some trust with yourself. Now, there's 7 different types of boundaries, and we can get into those at another time. I'll also be talking about the 7 different types of boundaries a lot in my next podcast. or in my new podcast, I should say. But the idea here, first and foremost, is to have boundaries with yourself that you do not break. And when you do, you quickly forgive yourself and recalibrate, put yourself right back in to the boundary, right? People who trust themselves and who have high self-confidence are people who do have really great boundaries with themselves, okay? So things like, I really do feel like I trust myself when my emotions are coming to the surface. I listen to my emotions. I talk to myself in a respectful manner. Thank you so much for bringing that to my attention, Erin. Why are you feeling that way? I get curious about why I feel the way I do. And I really listen to why. I don't give myself the luxury of an I don't know. I always find the answers that my body is telling me. If I'm feeling something, then I need to know why I feel the way I do. Second, mutual respect. Respect comes from trust, to be honest with you. Think about someone that you feel like has broken your trust over and over and over and over again. There's somebody that can be difficult to respect. However, what is also true is if you feel like you don't respect yourself, it's also very hard to respect other people. So this is why self-respect is so important and being respectful of oneself. One, two, we'll go with that. Like it's so important to have self-respect, like self-trust, to have self-respect. If you do not respect yourself, it is very, very hard to trust yourself and to create boundaries around your life, around your values. Because let's just be honest. If you're focusing instead in all the ways that you don't measure up, you cannot focus on your values. You're focusing on the things you didn't do. Now, it might feel like you're focusing on your boundaries and holding yourself accountable to breaking them, but that's not the case. That's absolutely not the case. All right, my loves, I have some exciting news. Have you been really ready to put your trauma behind you, to understand your divine mission and purpose, to see how God sees you, and to see what you can actually put out into the world besides what is coming at you? Are you really ready for a major change and a major shift? If you are, I've got some really exciting news for you. August 3rd, 2024, I will be one of the many speakers speaking at the Divine Daughter event in Utah. You can go to My Divine Joy, that's capital My, M-Y, capital Divine, D-I-V-I-N-E, capital Joy, Joy.com, mydivinejoy.com, to get your tickets now. Come learn about how to heal from your betrayal trauma. Come learn how to heal life. How to take your emotions and make them into a masterpiece of intelligence. To pick up the pieces of your shattered life and to see God's hand in all of it. To finally make sense of why this is happening to you and the message that you have in all of it. If you're ready to make the major change, go grab your tickets mydivinejoy.com and come see us for this massive, fantastic one-day event. And of course, come say hi while you're there. mydivinejoy.com. The truth of the matter is, when we do something wrong or we act outside of our values, instead of beating ourselves up for it, if we simply say, why did I do that? Why did I feel like I had to do that? That was out of alignment with who I truly am. So why do I feel like I had to do that? And again, getting curious about our actions, because our actions will speak, like if we ask ourselves like why we did the thing we did, it'll speak to the emotion that we had and the thought behind the emotion. And it's the thoughts that drive everything that we do, right? Our money story, our relationship stories, our story about ourselves, it creates our results. This is also a lot of the reason too why a lot of people struggle, like I said, in their relationships and in their money stories, is because of the thought processes that drive the result. But we don't realize that we are the ones that are legitimately the creators of our lives. And we see the way that this other person is showing up, not as a reflection upon our belief system, but as a reflection on them. Now, granted, it is a reflection on them. That is true. But it is also a reflection upon your belief system. For example, I had this wonderful, beautiful client who had a business partner who was less than honest. We'll just say that. Okay. And one of the things that this business partner, this client, I should say, mentioned to me about the business partner was how she felt like the business partner never showed up for her. That she wasn't honest. But as I listened to her speak about money and how money didn't show up for her and how money wasn't honest in some way, I could see a thread that this business partner was reflecting her belief. Like, really seriously, it's true. Our belief system attracts into us relationships that will reflect those beliefs. And so whenever we have relationships that do not show up with mutual respect, trust, space, and love, well, we get to examine, okay, well, what is this person really reflecting to me? And then we get to look back in our belief system and say, do I believe that? How high do I believe that? Is it on a scale of 1 to 10? How high do I believe that? And we move forward. So, mutual respect, mutual trust, or self-respect, self-trust, and space. Let's go into space next. Space is something that we must give ourselves. And I'll be honest, this is the one thing, well, actually, I think like women in general kind of struggle with all 4 of these pillars when it comes to themselves. But mutual space is definitely one thing that we really struggle with when it comes to being a mother, being in our spaces. We feel like we're constantly having to share our personal spaces. And in some ways that is true. Okay. I totally get this too. Like, I'm a mom of 6 kids, right? At this time, their ages range from 17 to 3, right? And there's a lot of ruckus often that happens in my home. And one of the things I've been noticing lately is instead of making it focus on me, like the cleanliness of the house, I need to focus on them and how, them respecting themselves is also a reflection of their spaces. That's shifted almost everything into more of a, I get to be in the space I want to be because I'm surrounded by people who respect themselves. And that shows in their spaces. Now, granted, they're still learning, and that's something hard to teach a 3-year-old, right? But this idea of self-respect is something that hasn't, and it's shocking, right? Because here I have been talking about self-respect for years, but it's not something that they've really caught on to the degree that I want them to. So when we are all respecting ourselves, every single person, then it tends to shift the respect that we have in the relationships around us. And respecting our spaces is another one of our boundaries, right? Whenever we have really good boundaries with ourselves, and again, that reflects in our spaces, then we also have really good boundaries with others. Another boundary that I've realized too, because, my home is my workspace, and therefore my workspace needs to feel clean and organized and tidy. And if it doesn't, or if I feel like after I've organized something and I've cleaned something and the kids mess it up again, right? Well, that feels really disrespectful. And I get to ask myself why, right? What boundary do I need to set? Well, recently I've come to this realization that if my space is not feeling respectful because, one of my kids has totally destroyed it or messed it up, or they haven't followed through with what they said they would do, well, I'm not going to go to bed without a clean home anymore. That's my personal choice. And if I'm having to bang pots and pans around at midnight or vacuum at midnight, or maybe I might blast the music at midnight so I can do what I need to do, right? If they don't like that, that's their choice. That's their accountability, right? I'm just not going to worry about their sleep if I'm also going to have to be awake because they didn't follow through with their things, right? That's one way for me to stay in respect in my space and respect in myself. I'm not angry at them. But the thing is if we get to a point where actions are like the people around us, if their actions are consistently leading to a negative response, not one like where we're yelling and screaming, because that's actually breaking the respect with ourselves, but just having to do what we need to do and them not necessarily liking that, well, that's when behavior changes. And we need to do the same thing for ourselves again, right? We need to take a look and see, are we possibly breaking any of these boundaries with ourselves? If we feel like we have to yell and scream in order to make ourselves heard and in order to get things done, well, is that really in alignment with who we truly are? Does that align with the respect, the self-respect, the self-trust? Oftentimes it doesn't. We feel guilty for yelling and screaming, and so it puts us in this really nasty position of constantly having to break our own boundaries, but staying stuck in the same result. If you take a look at my boundary before that, my home is going to be clean before I go to bed. Sometimes that does mean that I have to stay up late, right? When my family doesn't follow through. But it's also meaning that they're going to have to stay up late too, because I'm not going to worry about them having a quiet rest when they didn't follow through with what they said they were going to do. I'm holding them actually to their self-respect. I'm not angry. I can understand not wanting to do chores, right? I don't always want to do them. But when I hold myself to that boundary, what ends up happening is it holds everyone else to the boundary as well. Last one is mutual love. See, when we have respect, when we have trust, and we have a respectful and trustful space, this is where love can flourish, because we really do appreciate the people around us and the way they show up in our lives. When we love ourselves because we're respectful, because we trust ourselves, because we love the actions that we take, we can recognize those same characteristics in other people because we are living them ourselves. So what happens when we feel like we are like maybe we're already married, we do all this self-work, and maybe our spouse isn't into it? Well, that might mean the end of the relationship, I'll be honest. But one thing I've learned too is that if we do feel like we're in that space, the best thing we can do for ourselves is to love ourselves, respect ourselves, and trust ourselves enough to create the space that we need to flourish, to be sustainable, to be on our own if we need to be. And that's a good thing even if you're in a healthy relationship. Because self-sustainability gives you freedom, and it'll only give the person that you're married to or the people that are in your closest relationships the example and the space to do the same. Everything starts with the relationship that you have with yourself and seeing yourself the way God sees you. And that also takes a trust in Him. A trust in Him that He did create a miracle when He created you. And not just a miracle, but something that has incredible power that maybe you're learning to use. And when you're learning to use a power, just like any superhero, there's going to be some times where that power is used accidentally. Okay. But you will master these things if you trust yourself enough. Our relationships are a mirror to something going on inside of ourselves. And so if we want more healthy, supportive, sustainable relationships that are built upon mutual respect, mutual trust, mutual space, and mutual love, then what we must do is make sure we're giving ourselves those things first. Now, if you guys want help with boundaries, please reach out. Either I or Stephanie will meet with you and help you figure out like what are your true boundaries and how you can start stepping into them and really living them today. And also, if you guys are interested, I am going to be creating a course called Boundaried Up, where we're going to be talking about how to have that self-respect, self-trust, the self-space and the self-love through those boundaries. It is going to be a course entirely online that you can move through at your own space. And the best part about this is the course is only $297 right now. That's insanely low price. And I do have a couple of payment options for you if needed. If you're interested in the Boundaried Up course and you want in, feel free to reach out to me either through email, Erin Anderson, the trauma coach @gmail.com, or find me on Instagram, Erin Anderson, the trauma coach. Reach out to Stephanie. I will put some links to her in to how to reach out to her as well. Or find me on Facebook, Erin Anderson, Betrayal Trauma Coaching. And let me know that you want in on the boundaries course, and we will get you signed up immediately, and you can start going through at your own pace. Okay, my loves? Everybody deserves to have boundaries. Everybody deserves to have these things, but it always starts with how we show up for ourselves first. I will see you on the other side. Bye, my loves. Okay, so I've got a question for you. Have you joined my free Facebook group or Instagram page yet? If you haven't, go and do that. And this is the reason why. I always post my freebies, updated information, and all kinds of goodies for my community in that page. I'm also really active. I post videos. I answer questions. So if you guys really, really want to get in and interact with me, go like me on Facebook, go join my group, The Other Side of the Struggle, Healing from Betrayal Trauma. Come find me on Instagram, Erin Anderson, Betrayal Trauma Coach, and come follow me because I always have something good there just for you, my audience, and I love connecting with you there. I also post anytime that I have groups going on. I talk sometimes about my programs. So if you guys are interested in working with me or even just following me and getting as much free content as you possibly can, go hang out in my group. Go connect with the ladies that are there. Also come and join Immune and Unashamed for those married couples that are following me, because in that group, me and my business partner, Kaisen Kidd, are also talking and offering some great content. Hey guys, thanks so much for hanging out with me today and listening in on this podcasting episode. Don't forget to tune in next week. It's gonna be awesome.